Thumb Husky here. Whoops. Anyways, this is a instant reaction to the Deaf School spells. For the Deaf teaser. Unfortunately, when I tried to pull up the Bobcat video, it was privated for some reason. I don't know why. So I found a video by Ice Gold who is going to be reacting to it. So we're reacting to somebody reacting to the Deaf teasers, but I will pause it and go through and just give my thoughts about it because since I am a deaf school coach in terms of Wizard101 content and stuff, and just Wizard101 content overall, I wanted to just highlight my main school that I usually play and just sort of give my initial thoughts of how it's going to affect Def's identity in the meta and its idea for minions, since this has been a sort of new spell and then the minion audit and all that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this.
For the summer it's long. I don't imagine Death got too much, especially in comparison to a school like Myth. Death probably doesn't really deal too much with minions, but
That's true.
We will have to see what's all they got.
I am going to pause real quick because there are only two minions that you need to know about from the audit that are affected by death. One is Maudwin the Deceiver, or something like that. And that is the Zafaria spell at level 75 that you get for each school. You get a specified minion at level 75. The other one was Animate, which was an X-Pip school. So you would get a minion based on how many pips you had. The more pips you had, the stronger the minion. Obviously, that's going to change with the audit and the update and everything. But either way, we can continue.
From this update, so let me put my headphones on and not make it blow out your ears. That would be really sick. The volume slider on my keyboard is a blessing and a curse, because as you can no doubt tell, it is very inconsistent.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Mr. Bobcat here. I'm going to be showing you all the new Death cinematics as well as the new Death minion changes coming to the summer update. But first, I just want to thank the community managers Mickey and Emma for this opportunity community throughout the week. I highly recommend you check those out. If you want to see the spell animation, I'll leave a timestamp to skip to if you are anxious to know what it is. But I wanted to cover the minion update in case you haven't heard. I'm going to go over what minions brought us in the spring as well as what's coming in the summer update, just so you get a better idea of what this update will be like, especially from a PvP perspective. In the spring, we got minions that now scale with your level, which basically means, unlike the older minions, these don't just die to a wand hit or an AoE, which makes them more worth summoning because they aren't as easy to eliminate. We also saw minions having specific and predictable moves. For example, Troll Minion, it is a trap minion, and most PvP players know that he will cast 5 unique traps. And
yeah, so this minion, I think, just the idea of minions having like a set number of casts and then focusing on like 1 or 2 hanging effects, I think is probably the best way for them to go.
Yeah, so I'm just going to pause it here because I wanted to give my thoughts about the minion audit and my thoughts about the entire minion update as a whole, because obviously I know a lot of people are sort of, not happy that they are moving away from, oh, they should have infinite cards and they don't disappear after a set amount of rounds. They should just, use the spells that are given to them as long as they're on the field until they're taken out. Now, yes, they could run with that, but I think what they were trying to do is making minions a lot more so they're meant to be, you put them out, they do what they need to do, and then they're gone. It's sort of like a hanging effect, or like a damage over time. The damage over time does its damage, and then it disappears. Same thing with a minion. I think it's more for consistency purposes, because having something that is permanent, not even blades and traps are permanent, because you use them. Or you remove them for gambits, or you clear them, Not everything is infinite in the game, so having minions sort of be this infinite source of traps, blades, damage AoE, whatever, just is not consistent, I don't think. And obviously I can see where they're going with in this update. Obviously, you could swing one way or the other. I think, this is the best of, the 2 decisions that I would have done. But, we can continue.
I think that's probably like the best thing that they could have done with minions, because otherwise like the unpredictability made them pretty useless in a lot of cases.
spam them. but because he has specific moves, it's easier to counter, especially if you are a fire duel school. You know that Immolate is the best card to cycle for when Troll is summoned, and minions now have a set number of spells and will leave combat once all spells are used. Similar to when a boss cheats, floating text will appear. This was all a part of the spring update. Here is what is to come.
Yeah, and that was actually another point I was actually going to say, and I'm going to give an entire breakdown video of all the minions, or just my thoughts on the minions in general, because I know that a lot of people, the unpredictability of minions is what made them so unique, but making them predictable is actually very good, since most of these minions, are going to be, not PvP locked anymore. So since they follow the identity of the school that you're using, it'll be so that, hey, you can counter them. You can actually counter the minions when they're summoned in PvP now, or advanced combat, that you don't need to worry about, pulling AoEs and killing them. Just use the correct counter, and you've countered the minion as well as the school that's using said minion, right? Like I said, I'll give an entire breakdown of that later.
In the summer update, all minions everywhere in the game have been updated with this new system
Dude, this is Aaron.
we just talked about, and are now available in advanced combat such as raids or challenge mode dungeons. We are also going to be seeing improved AI as well as updated spells, making them more back into PvP.
Yeah, we'll have to see what anime looks like.
Another cool feature is that we are going to be able to train other schools emerging, because these minions are not school specific. Only time will tell on what minions will be the most overpowered and sought after, but for now, the major change to this update is the new mechanic Sap, which all it does is it'll remove a portion of a minion's health based on its rank, and minions will be ranked. If I said that right, that was pretty hard to pronounce.
A little bit of damage.
Okay.
Wow, very quick and a nice animation. But here is what the new death spell.
Jacques scratches.
Jacques scratches. Okay, so Jacques the Scratcher as the spell. I'm actually curious, and obviously this does make sense, because Jacques the Scratcher is, he is, obviously his name is a play off of the real life Jack the Ripper. It is a British folklore. He did, he did some pretty heinous stuff. He is, in his time. I don't want, I'm not gonna say what he did, because obviously that is something that does get videos flagged, and I don't want to flag this video. But if you know who Jack the Ripper is, that's what Jacques the Scratcher was for Wizard101. So seeing that they are sort of going with the sort of, the theme makes sense. So actually very interesting. And I think this is the highest pipped new spell that we've seen. I think all the other ones have been 1, 2, or 3. So death being 4 pips is actually quite interesting. My curiosity is, I wish Death still had a 4-pip AoE that they could just train up, right? Like, same thing with Life. I wish they also had a trainable AoE. And I think this was, obviously you don't want to do something like that for this, but I think they could have done that for, Death here, is they could have made Jacques be a 4-pip AoE, but the bottom path is the sort of differential one, and actually still would have its gambit on it, but that's not what they were going for, and I totally understand that. But let's go ahead and see what this bottom path looks like.
I imagine is what it's supposed
that's
to
what
be,
I'm curious about.
An aura clear.
Okay. Ooh. Okay, so they are leaning into the aura clears again. As you know, Death specifies, so they're all about negative charms and stuff like that. So negative charms and also negative auras. They specialize in putting on negative auras on enemies, whereas Storm and Life usually have positive auras. Death counters both of those by clearing them and putting either negative auras or other negative hanging effects on Life and Storm. So this fits perfectly. I'm surprised they didn't do clear, or they didn't sap they could have done sap and then they put on the negative aura on whoever. That could have been something interesting, but I can see why they didn't do that. But, that's still very cool that, this bottom path Jacques will probably be a lot better for PvP and advanced content, whereas this is just going to be a solid single target hit, right? 375 is pretty good DPP considering Vampire is like 350 or 335 or something like that. That's not bad. Or it might actually be 375. So that's actually on DPP with Vampire. Just it doesn't heal you back. It's just a nice, simple, single target hit. Which, for advanced content, you have to sort of do that unless you have, like, the bottom path be, other hits that are AoE. But still, I will probably use this spell, even if it isn't for, like, PvE purposes. I still might use it just normally in normal play, especially since I do like doing team ups. And I usually try to run, different setups. I don't try to go and just one-shot everything for the enemies. So this is actually a very neat spell, and I'm actually quite interested to see how we can use this in normal daily questing and or just farming or other purposes.
For a minus 30 negative aura,
Okay, very interesting. So this is like poison if it was like, okay, so, well, not necessarily poison, because poison clears a negative aura, but this is like another big tempo swing card.
but this
Okay, so it's a clear, lost some damage, clear aura for 2 negative 50. Okay, so it's a clear...
spell is kind of insane for death because they already have Monster Mash.
Okay, so now, since this is the death video, I am going to be a little bit more hands-on with this one. Because, yes, this adds on to the already stacked sort of tempo cards that we have. Because Monster Mash is yet another one of those tempo cards. Especially if, somebody's trying to, has a positive aura. I mean, we already have Monster Mash, which puts up 2 chromatic weaknesses, as you see here. But we now will have another way to... instead of having chromatic weaknesses, now we can instead put up a universal damage aura that prevents the enemy from actually dealing damage. So this actually is probably one of the strongest cards, in my opinion, that is getting added into the game for the Marleybone update. I'm going to call it the Marleybone update because that's, those are all the spells. They're all Marleybone themed. My prediction for Storm is it's probably going to be something Katzenstein related, obviously, since Dr. Katzenstein is actually a Storm boss, and he does utilize with electricity because we're powering up a clockwork in his lab after we defeat him. So I do see them probably leaning into something like that for the Storm, but we'll have to wait for that tomorrow, which will be Almond. I might react to that just because I am curious about Storm, since Storm is my secondary that I play a lot. But yeah, we'll just continue this video since there isn't really a lot because I did skip around a little bit.
But this
Okay, so it's a clear, lost some damage, clear aura for 2 negative 50s. Okay, interesting.
is a new way death will counter auras. My original reaction was shocked compared to the other spells this week. I can definitely see this being a go-to for aura clears on death, but let me know what you guys think about this new spell coming in the summer update. I really like this new one. Death minions are getting some...
I'll
I think
cover it.
that it's gonna be like better for other schools to use on top of death as well.
Yeah, so I'll give my final thoughts at the end of this video because I do want to see the minion update before the minion updates. Because there's only 2. There's only Animate and then Malduit the Deceiver.
Just most notably,
I hope I'm
Animate
saying
minion,
her name
which
right.
most death wizards are familiar with.
There it
This
is.
is a X-Pit minion that ranges from rank 2 to 6. It will have 6 spells, being harmful charms like infections and weaknesses. We don't know what specifically they will have or the total amount of HP.
Okay. Animate. Harmful charms, then hits. Interesting. I'm curious about the harmful charms because are they going to be healing negative charms? Or are they going to be weaknesses like Plague or something like that? Or like Weakness? That's actually very interesting. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm hoping that these harmful charms are instead not weaknesses. I would rather them be the plagues, or what you would call, because those are very strong, the infections. Because having three of those infections, the trifold infection, is one of the easiest ways to get a negative charm gambit off. You put the tri-infection, at least two tri-infections up, you have your instant gambit when you have it up. So, that's one thing I am interested in, is seeing what Animate will have in terms of what harmful charms they'll have. And I'm curious about what the hits will be in as well. Anyways, we'll continue.
They will have. We have to wait until test run, but for the debuffs, I'd imagine they will be like the ice minions. It will also be able to act as a shield clear. This minion specifically says that its hits will increase in damage based on the pips used to summon it. We're also seeing a change to Malduit. She is now a rank 6. She has 6 spells, and her spells will be blades and hits.
Okay, this is different because Death is not a blade school. That is the one thing that Death is not. Like, Death is, technically it is blades, but it's negative blades, negative charms, right? So that, since this school has blades and hits, I'm kind of curious how this minion will work. Once again, I think, depending on what blades it has, it could be easily used by other schools, like Storm. If it has, like, Balance Blade or something like that, or Blade Storm or something like that, if it has like blades that can be used for other schools, I'm thinking they would probably lean into using it more than itself. But once again, time will tell what this card will actually do. I will go ahead and do an entire video when Test Run comes out, taking a look at these spells and showing them all off for you. So yeah, we'll continue on.
It's super excited to see what her cards will be. I look forward to what you guys think of the new Death minions, as well as a new Death spell coming to the summer update in the comments. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you're new. And as always, guys.
Okay, so, very interesting. Like I said, I'm curious about what the minions will do in terms of what their spell cards are, because I'm very curious how one, Animate will work, how well they will synergize with setting up your harmful charm gambits, right? And my other curiosity is how Malduit will work, since she is blades and hits. What blades are they going to use and what hits are in their kit. I'm guessing they'll probably have drains instead of just normal pip hits like Jocks the Scratcher or Skeletal Pirate or Bone Dragon or whatever it tries to use. I'm thinking it'll probably definitely be, stuff like Wraith, stuff like Vampire. But I could see why Malduit probably wouldn't have drains, mainly because since it's going to disappear after the spells it uses are done, I don't see why having drains would actually make any sense. But Jocks the Scratcher is probably the, I'm just going to call it Jocks the Scratcher spell, even though it's called Jocks Scratches, But I think that spell will be, if you have the pips to do the Monster Mash, you do the Monster Mash. Or you do the other version of Monster Mash that you don't need to worry about, because I think the top path is not PvP banned either. So you could probably get away with using that top path instead, because what you could do is you can use either Animate, or you could use the new Jocks Scratches spell and then lead it into the Monster Mash. Top path Monster Mash if it is usable in PvP. So fair enough. I think the most powerful spell out of this update for Death, I think the minions, I don't know. I definitely think Jocks Scratches is going to be the strongest spell, and one of those spells you want to train on all of your wizards. Or, farm as many spell elements as you can, max the spell elements out on every single wizard. Because it has utility for every, any school that has it can get free negative aura up on somebody, right? you can get a free negative damage aura on your enemy by just clearing a positive aura off of them, which is very, very powerful. And in PvP, can really change up, you know, if you were on the back foot, that could be a way to change the direction of the match and turn it into other things. So I think Jacques Scratches probably is one of the stronger update spells. I'm not going to say that for sure because I will not be testing all of them. But I do think that Death spell in particular is actually very good. In terms of the whole update, this has been a very interesting update. Like I said, I'll give my full thoughts in an actual video about it, and I'll definitely do some testing on Test Realm with the minions and stuff, see what, especially on Death, because I do want to make like an entire Death coaching guide for like, an entire video where I go over like, building, card setup, deck, gear, the whole 9 yards for level 180. If you want to see like lower PvP versions of schools and stuff, I could probably do that too. But besides that, so far I've liked all the spell updates and all the minions and all the new, spells and their bottom paths. And yeah, I think the summer update is going to be very interesting. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more of what could be coming in the Marleybone. Since they are Marleybone spells, I am curious if the Marleybone revamp is just right around the corner and it is being implemented, where we get to see Marleybone up textured, up graphicalized, and we actually get to see a better version of Marleybone than what it looks like right now. Like, and hopefully we get to see what the dungeons will be, because I am curious what dungeons we will be farming these spellments for. Because, it's probably going to be like Aquila, where you fight them, you get the badge, and then you get the spellment of your school. It might be like Aquila. I hope it's not in terms of the Chronicle Pack, because the Aquila Chronicle Pack was, in my opinion, not the best thing to add. But, either way, I am looking forward to seeing what Testrom comes with. And I'm guessing since the last teaser comes on Sunday, we could be seeing Testrom probably next week. So that is actually very interesting and very curious. So either way, and that'll do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a very short, very little video reacting to the new Death teasers. I'm very excited to see what, how the meta will change and how the meta will shift with minions being added back into the ground game, and seeing if minions actually become a staple of like normal combat again. Because that is something that I was very curious about, is if minions could ever become actually like somewhat decent or somewhat strong and actually have their part in actual normal combat. And I think this minion audit might do that. And then we might actually see some strategies involving minions where you don't run a full group of people, you actually run minions to, help progress fights and such. Especially if it's like where you need to do like split up fights and stuff. So yeah, I'm curious to see where this will go. Once again, I thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment. If you haven't already, join the Discord, and if you haven't and you want some coaching, go to the coaching tab, submit your clip, and I will react to it either on stream or I will do it as a full-on YouTube video where I go over your entire clip and I will give you tips and pointers as we go, and hopefully you guys can learn something from that, because coaching is now in full swing, and starting next week we will be trying to upload as many Wizard101 content videos for you as possible, as well as putting out as many streams as I can, as I want to do a little mini series on stream where I'm just questing a low level death wizard from level 1 all the way up to max, and just sort of teaching, being very coaching while doing it. But yeah, that will do it for me, and I will see you guys in the next video.